Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close-Up, a 3rd District challenger, the Democrat throwing his hat into the ring to challenge Zach Nunn for his seat in Congress. Des Moines voters have elected their first female mayor. Connie Boesen's plans for the city after she's sworn into office. And Governor Reynolds' endorsement, why she says she decided to break her neutrality and publicly support Ron DeSantis for president.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and welcome to Close Up. I'm Laura Terrell in for Amanda Rooker this week. A Democratic challenger is running against incumbent 3rd District Congressman Zach Nunn next November. Lennon Bacham made his announcement Thursday. Bacham was born in Mount Pleasant and enlisted in the Iowa National Guard at age 17. He later served in the U.S. Agriculture Department under Tom Vilsack. KCCI political reporter Amanda Rooker talked with Bacham about why he decided to enter the race.
Yeah, no question that my service is foundational in my life. Like I said, I joined the military at 17 years old. I actually started my career with an ambush. I brought an Army recruited home to my parents. They didn't know I had been talking to this guy for about a year. I wasn't old enough to sign the papers on my own, and so they needed to co-sign my enlistment with me. They eventually did, because they understood why I wanted to give back. I wanted to give back to this country that has given us so much. This country, this state, that and the liberties that we prize here. I don't take those for granted. That is internal with who I am, and that's the type of person I'm going to be when I go to Congress. That military service is key because I understand, especially from my deployment, when we mobilized to go to Afghanistan. We were down in Fort Hood, Texas. Like it was in pretty early of the year. Like there was no question that my battle buddies in the barracks knew I was a Democrat. They picked on me because of it, but it didn't matter because when we were in the field, at the end of the day, like I had their back and they had mine, and we knew that because we didn't judge each other on our politics. We judged each other on our character, and that's what matters. And if guys from different ends of the political spectrum can come together to build a brotherhood, to defend this country, like we can do that again in Congress and right here in our communities. And I plan to do that when I go to Washington.
There's been a lot of speculation around who was going to run for this seat, who was going to be the Democratic challenger. And you know, there's still a year from the next election, but this is traditionally a little bit later to jump into the race than what we've seen. What led you to the decision to announce now and to be that challenger to jump into the race?
I think Iowans and Americans can sense and feel that our country is incredibly polarized, that people are moving apart, that folks are dividing themselves into their political camps. We need to find a way to bring this country back together, to rebuild these communities and to have a little bit of balance. When Governor Robert Ray brought the tide on people to Iowa, he wasn't doing that for partisan politics. He did it with compassion, and it was common sense. The people in this state who helped the tide on refugees settle in their communities, they were Republicans, they were Democrats, they were both and everyone in between. Again, it wasn't politics. It was the right thing to do. These folks helped the tide on refugees find homes, find jobs, build a community together. And this is the type of world in which I think Iowans want again. A time in which in our state we can think about and be proud of the work of the folks who are in charge. That's the kind of experience that I have in my life. And I think Iowans are tired at this point of having partisan politics like we see up in the House caucus in their face every day.
What's next for you now that you've jumped into the race? You know, this is day one, but what is your campaign going to look like?
Talking to a whole heck of a lot of people. There's no question. You know, I was born and raised in a small town. I joined the Army National Guard with guys from small towns. My battalion, when we deployed, was made up of folks from small towns. Like, I understand rural Iowa. I'm going to go to every corner of this district, and I'm going to work for every single vote. Like, I want to make sure Iowans remember and know the type of people in this state, and because of the values that we have here in this state. I'm going to show up in every corner I can and just talk to everyone I possibly can. And I plan to win this race next November.
And the last time we saw the race in this district, it was incredibly close. I think Zach Nunn won by about 2,000 votes. Does that tell you anything about what this race could potentially look like for you, or do you glean anything from that about how close it was in the 3rd district?
Yeah, I think this is a winnable seat for Democrats, and I plan to do that.
Republican Congressman Zach Nunn is still in his first term in Congress representing District 3. Nunn's campaign released this statement about Baucum's announcement welcoming him into the race, adding he'll have to survive a primary challenge to run against him next November. And 2 other candidates have filed paperwork as Democrats to run for the 3rd district seat, but neither Melissa Vine and Tracy Lyman have made any formal announcement about running. Well, here's a look at how races in other districts are coming together. In District 1, Democrat Christina Bohannon is challenging Republican Marionette Miller Meeks. Bohannon also ran in 2022. In District 2, Democrats Sarah Corkery and Jacob Weiland are challenging Republican incumbent Ashley Hinson. And in District 4, incumbent Republican Randy Feenstra faces challenges from Democrats Jay Brown and Ryan Melton. Next on Close Up, a history-making mayor's election. What Connie Boesen plans for Des Moines as the city's first woman mayor. And earlier this year, Governor Kim Reynolds said she had no plans to endorse a candidate before the Iowa caucuses, what she says changed her mind. An historic election Tuesday here in Des Moines, voters selecting a new mayor for the first time in 20 years. Frank County, who had been the mayor since 2004, announced in September he would not run for a 6th term. 4 candidates ran to replace County. At-large member City Council member Connie Boesen, activist Denver Foote, Ward 3 Council member Josh Mandelbaum, and musician Christopher Von Arx. Tuesday, Des Moines voters chose Boesen as their next mayor, making her the first female mayor in the city's history. KCCI's Marcus McIntosh caught up with Boesen the day after the election as she was picking up her campaign signs. He asked about her historic win and Boesen's plans for Des Moines' future.
Well, it's an exciting time. It's time to see what we can do to keep moving the city forward and doing the things we talked about. You know, the revitalization of neighborhoods, making sure we have a safe, clean city, and economic development, and the things that we need to do to take care of our city.
Mayor County's big thing was climate change. Is there one big thing you want to put your focus on or put your stamp on?
Well, I think we'll continue with the work that he started and the legacy he built. We're adopting. We had a whole new plan that we talked about on Monday, and I think it's coming maybe the next meeting, to adopt the ADAPT DSM, which is a really comprehensive plan on climate. And it's not just one area. It's whether it's community gardens, it's all the different things we can do, because it's just not carbon free, but there's many other aspects. So I think the whole ADAPT DSM plan is a culmination of the work he started and the work we did with our resolution on carbon free issues that were brought forward. And so I think we'll just continue with that. Well, I think it's a statement that it's time for, it was not only I was the first woman mayor, but it's been a long time since we've had somebody from the east side. And I've represented the city, citywide, at large. So I've seen all areas of the city. And that's one reason I ran to begin with. I saw my side of town saying, what can we do more? And we can see how growth is starting in the Highland Park area with some long-term businesses and new businesses coming in. And that's really what it's all about. Taking every little node that we have and how do we refurbish it and rebuild it and give people in every neighborhood opportunities to create more jobs and to create a place you can walk to and enjoy. Well, exciting to be able to say that I broke the ceiling. Yeah, 160 years, it did take too long. But like I said, I've been saying is I was putting up these yard signs and there were two little girls that are 7 years old. And I said, I could be the first woman mayor. And the excitement, they go, really? That? They were so excited. And to know that you have the possibility that anybody can achieve what they want to achieve. And there should not be a barrier no matter who you are.
Glad the campaign is over?
Yes. Because now we can get to the work that we need to do and build on what we've already done and keep moving the city forward. So this is a place we want people to want to come live, work, and thrive. And that's what my whole campaign has been about. Making Des Moines the best it can be. We have a lot of work to do. We are an older city and we know that, but I know that we have seen that if we come together, we can do some great things.
The campaign against Josh Mandelbaum wasn't the nicest campaign. How do you two put that behind in the back burner and work together moving forward?
Well, I think we all know that we are here because we're here to serve the people of Des Moines. And yes, campaigns happen and things are said and things happen. But that's one reason I think I got the endorsement of all my other members of the council and the mayor is because they know I've done just that. I will listen, and we don't always get along all the time. We don't always agree, and we don't have to. And that's part of how we bring people together, compromise on what we need to do. But at the end of the day, I know that we're all focused for one thing, and it's really to make Des Moines the best it can be.
I'm trying to ask this as sensitive as possible. Mayor Cownie resigned, you were elected, you're both roughly the same age. Does that affect things at all?
It shouldn't. I mean, you can be young and old in thought, but you can be old and young in thought. I come out of a retail background. I have never had to stay the same. Like I said at one of the forums, I said, every Monday my report card on sales was up, and if I didn't adjust and change to what was going on, then I wouldn't have had a job as long as I did. I take that approach on everything I do. I created a business out of nothing, and I am always looking for a new way to do things in a better way. So it's not about age, it's about attitude and what you're going to do for people. I listen to the people, I reach out to the people, and that's not an issue about age. We need to have an honest conversation how we're going to help Des Moines. We are the capital city. We should be the hub of vitality. We should be the hub of all business growth. We should want us to be successful. I mean, but we want everybody in Iowa to be successful. This isn't about urban rural. This is about Iowa and how we make it the best it can be. And we are at the pinpoint. We are the largest city. And I believe we need to really work together to bring together what are the common issues. And we've got to get partisan out of it because this isn't, like Mayor Cownie said, potholes don't care what party you're in. Storm sewers that need to be repaired don't care. We just need to do the work that we need to do for the people that we serve. And people should be our forefront and how we make this the best for the people that live in our community.
So because you had to get votes from Republicans and Democrats.
I got them from everybody. Independents, Republicans, Democrats, it didn't matter. Again, this is a nonpartisan race. So I got them from everybody, all fields. I had people in every part of the city supporting me. So it's, it was a broad base. I tried to hit a broad base and give the message that I'm here to help make our city better, no matter where you live. People actually taking the time, and a lot of it was about schools and the vouchers, because they're very concerned, because schools are critical to this community. We need strong schools to have strong community. And so that's one thing I will be bridging and having meetings. And we already had one meeting with the new superintendent about the community and schools people. And we will continue to see how we're going to work together to help strengthen our public schools and help them make it better.
Voters in Des Moines Ward 1 elected a city council representative on Tuesday. It was a special election to replace Indira Shoemaker, who stepped down earlier this year after she stopped showing up to council meetings. 6 people ran to replace Shoemaker. A 7th candidate, Kimberly Stroke-Bogus, dropped out just days before the election. Voters chose Chris Coleman to replace Shoemaker. Coleman previously served as an at-large city council person for 5 terms, but decided not to run in 2019. KCCI's Marcus McIntosh asked Coleman why he decided to run again and what he plans to do now that he's back on the council.
Our ward, where I live and work, we need some representation, and I'm just happy that we now have it. We're going to go to work and make things happen.
How difficult is it going to be to rebuild the bridges that were burned when the former city council member was serving?
It's not going to be hard, but it's going to take time. And we'll do that by listening, engaging with people. I want everybody that lives in Ward 1 to feel like this is their home, that they belong, and that they own what we're doing. And I'll work hard to build those bridges.
What's your plan for the ward and then the council? What would you like to see done?
Well, number one, I've already gotten a ton of emails from people that said, I've had this problem in my neighborhood. I didn't know where to turn about this house next door, all kinds of things. So, the first 10 days or so, going to be catching up on all those things that have stalled where citizens really need somebody fighting for them at City Hall.
I don't know how to phrase this, but you're back on the council. What does that mean?
Yeah. I really loved it, and I felt like I did it with integrity and honesty, and I hope that the citizens would want that kind of civility and respect back on the council, and I'll do it. I'll get along with everybody. We'll do a lot of cool things. We'll feel good about it. I want people to love Des Moines. I love the big list that we land on, top this, top that. But what I really want is our own citizens to say this is a community I'm proud of and that I love.
And you kind of mentioned, how important is it for the council to have that civility instead of just this one person on the island just banging on the door, never going to get it?
Yeah, it's really divisive, and when you have that kind of divisiveness, what happens is people start trying to do things to make a point instead of doing things that make a difference, and so they're always trying to one up each other or put people in a box. I want to do things that make a difference. We have plenty on our plate. We don't have a lot of time or a lot of money, so let's spend all of our time and resources doing things that matter for the citizens and quit the pettiness.
Bozen, Coleman, and the other Des Moines elected officials will be sworn into office in January. Well, next on Close Up, Governor Reynolds throws her support behind Ron DeSantis, the effect that could have in the Iowa caucus race. Governor Kim Reynolds made a surprising announcement. She is endorsing Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign for president. This announcement was surprising because earlier this year, Reynolds said she was planning to withhold her endorsement of any candidate. Reynolds made her announcement during a rally here in Des Moines. So why did Reynolds decide now to make that endorsement with a little more than 2 months before the Iowa caucuses? Reynolds explained during the rally.
I thought long and hard about making this decision, about telling Iowans and telling you where I stand. It has been my honor to welcome all of the candidates to Iowa over the past 7 months. I have had the opportunity to speak with them publicly and privately, on the phone and at events, and as many of you saw, at the best state fair in the country with our Fireside Chats. We have a great group of Republicans that have stepped up, that put their lives on hold and their livelihoods on the line to help get this country back on track. And we owe each of them a debt of gratitude. As governor, I felt like it was my responsibility to provide all of the candidates a platform to share their message and vision with Iowans and help put their best foot forward. But I also believe that as a mom and as a grandma and as an American, I could not and cannot sit on the sidelines any longer. We are living in unprecedented times, and there is just too much at stake. Our country is in trouble. The world is a powder keg. And I'm here to tell you, without a doubt, that Ron DeSantis is the person that we need leading this country.
A recent CBS News poll showed 16% of likely caucus goers felt Governor Reynolds' endorsements matter to them above other endorsements, including friends and family. However, the poll also showed 43% of those likely caucus goers say endorsements did not play a factor in their decision. We asked KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford how Reynolds' endorsement could affect the Iowa caucuses in 2 months.
There's nothing in political science research that suggests that an endorsement can completely flip an election at any given time. An endorsement might help around the edges. If the latest poll from the Iowa Register is accurate, then it shows Mr. Trump with a 43% to 16% lead over Governor DeSantis and Haley from South Carolina. I can't see any endorsement changing those numbers to any great extent. Where an endorsement might help is if the governor puts her political resources in terms of organizational power at the service of Governor DeSantis. Now, at this point, I can't think that he would not have a good organization, but more than just a say-so regarding favoring a particular candidate, it's putting organizational resources at the disposal of that campaign that can help. Still, we have Mr. Trump with, as of the most recent Iowa poll, better than a 2-to-1 lead among Republicans over Governor DeSantis. And perhaps this endorsement will close that gap a little bit. But remember, you win the Iowa caucuses just by exceeding expectations. You don't have to win them per se, you just have to exceed expectations. So if this endorsement were to help DeSantis exceed expectations, then it's a plus for him. But we're still 2 months out. Well, the governor doesn't have to run for re-election until 2026, so she's got plenty of time. She's the most popular political figure among Republicans, at least, in Iowa right now. And she's in a fairly comfortable position for her. I wouldn't put too much stock in those who might say, well, is she angling for a vice presidency or something like that? Again, I wouldn't put any stock at this point in something like that. But as I said earlier, the governor has political power with control of the Iowa House, the Iowa Senate, and the governor's mansion. And this is a governor who apparently wants to use that power.
Donald Trump lashed out at both Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis after she announced her support. Writing on his social media site Truth Social, Trump called the two, quote, extremely disloyal people, unquote. Trump made other posts claiming the endorsement would be the end of Reynolds' political career and that his MAGA supporters would never back her again. Coming up after the break, a look ahead to our series of candidate interviews, Coffee with the Candidates. Close Up will not be seen next Sunday. Instead, KCCI Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker will host Coffee with the Candidates. Her guest will be GOP presidential candidate Ron DeSantis in a roundtable with several undecided Republican voters. You can catch that next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. and next Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Well, thank you for joining us for KCCI News Close Up. We will see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.